Hi everybody. So, in lieu of me doing one of my normal kind of funny, sort of whatever intros, I just wanted to say this. Looking at the live reaction for this episode, there are quite a few people that really don't like Missy, and I was warned that some of the comments were getting a bit spoilery, so let me say this. This episode, I am going to reveal my theory on Missy and who she might be. I have actually 2 or 3 guesses. Now, let me say this. If any of the guesses I have are correct, don't tell me. If they're wrong, don't tell me. Do what we used to do on this channel and keep it really vague. Try and trick me. You know, just kind of leave it up in the air, but don't, even if you hate the character for some reason, don't leave spoilers, because this is apparently a really big plot point for this season, or series, and I don't want that ruined, because I'm so close to getting caught up, and that's just something I really don't want ruined. Anyway, this has been a very long introduction. Let's get into the episode. I'm PapaKenn, and welcome to episode 87.2 of Discovering Doctor Who, the actual review, not the reaction, for Deep Breath. Yes, not Last Breath, I know, but yeah, there's so much to say about this episode, and I'm sure I might have forgotten to write down, or I might even forget to mention some things, so I'm looking forward to the discussion down below. Just please, again, like I said in the intro, avoid spoilers as much as possible. Please. Pretty please. I know you can do it. But anyway, moving on. Let's start with my favorite parts of this episode, starting with the new intro. Several of you have shared a link to the, I guess the original version of this intro, which was fan designed, and then Moffat actually brought on that fan to help work out, like, you know, the actual intro that came to be. And between the two, I mean, I mean, the similarities are obvious, but I have to say that overall, I really like how the new intro worked out. And the music overall, there's a lot of good things to say about it. I mean, it's definitely by far the much better than I feel the intro music. Especially for Matt Smith's first, maybe 2 series? Or, well, the majority of his series. It's like, I wasn't a huge fan of Matt Smith's intro song, unfortunately, but yeah, I feel like they did a good job overall, which I will comment on later. But yeah, the intro sequence and the music was just really good. So yeah, that's the first part. The second favorite part of this episode was that, for me, now again, I know from the comments that not everyone may feel this way, but I feel like in this episode, Clara feels more like a complete character. She feels like a real person as opposed to just a plot point, which, you know, although I enjoyed her and I could, in my personal opinion, see the nuances of the character back in season 7B, or series 7B, whatever. Back then, it didn't feel like, you know, the writers had a full grasp of who she was. Basically, I mean, even Neil Gaiman originally wrote his story as if it was for the Clara that came from the Victorian age. And then it feels like the rest of the writers, including Moffat for the most part, didn't fully grasp, like, how to make her a full, complete character. A good one, still in my opinion, but coming into this one, it's like she has more noticeable flaws. It's like the sort of, you know, some of her personality quirks are pointed out. She definitely stands up for herself, especially when she, you know, is face to face with Vastra, or Madame Vastra. It's just overall, I feel like Clara is moving in a positive direction, in my opinion, especially as far as how she's handled by the writers. Now, I've yet to see, the rest of the season, obviously, so that could change. My opinion could change, but as of this episode, I feel even more positive about her than I used to, because we've gotten to see more of her personality. We've gotten to see the flaws in addition to, the perfectness, as I guess some people might put it. But yeah, so there you go. My third favorite part of Deep Breath was Vastra, Jenny, Strax, and their Sonics, which, again, a few commenters mentioned that the Sonics that they used were all designed by fans, and just incorporated into the episode, which I thought was really cool. They definitely, the Sonics definitely stood out in the sense that I don't think that the characters have ever really used those kind of instruments before, because I guess that didn't really seem necessary. So on, I guess, a slightly negative side, they definitely felt a bit ham-handed, or just sort of forced in. But at the same time, I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was nice that, these side characters, who I've personally grown quite attached to, finally have some devices of their own, other than Vastra's sword and Strax's gun. So yeah, well, does Strax even have a helmet anymore? Well, that's besides the point. But yeah, it's cool to see them have their own devices, and the way in which they were utilized, I thought was pretty clever. The most clever and enjoyable of which was definitely Strax's medical procedure Sonic, or whatever it was. But yeah, that one definitely led to the most fun. But overall, I feel like the Sonics were employed in an enjoyable way. So yeah, I definitely really liked that. And of course, as always, I enjoyed the characters. Well, no, it wasn't really a character thing. There's something else I'll get into in a little bit, but that'll be in the annoyances. Yay! Alright, moving on. My fourth favorite part of this episode was that I felt there was an effective combo of comedy and an effective combo of comedy and darkness. I can definitely tell that this, there's always been a bit of darkness to the show at times, but this episode just definitely really, got up running with the dark atmosphere, with that poor dinosaur. And again, I know CGI, but it was almost like a Handel situation in which you grew in a sense attached to this dinosaur, at the very least in the sense that we're being told that this dinosaur has feelings. This dinosaur is scared, and it's worried, and it's all alone. And then as the Doctor is proclaiming, it's he's going to save her, he's going to get her back to her home, it gets burned to ashes. And you saw my reaction in the video. I found that really shocking overall, that they would go to that length, really. So yeah, the comedy and the darkness were very strong in this episode, and it's something that I honestly hope stays consistent throughout the season. Now, I know there'll be ups and downs of both, undoubtedly, but from what people have told me, this is a pretty dark season, so I'm interested to see how that progresses and how that works out as I go along through the season, or series. I apologize. But yeah, I just really overall thought that the comedy was mixed quite well with that dark feeling, that darkness that the show seems to be having the vibe of now. So yeah, I thought they did a good job in that regard. Now, my fifth favorite part of the episode was the the Clockwork Droids returning. No, obviously we hadn't seen these since Tennant's era in The Girl in the Fireplace, I believe is the name of the title. And I kind of guessed who they were at first just because of the clinking noises that they made as they went along, but I don't know, I found it really interesting that something happened to these droids, or these droid ship, that sent them so far back that they had been replacing parts, or replacing parts, replacing organs throughout millennia, apparently. And I found that really intriguing, especially the main guy. I don't know what you would call him. I don't think they ever gave him a name, but well, first of all, the exposed part of his head that showed the inner workings I thought was really interesting, especially when he would be thinking and like the clockwork stuff would be going in high gear. I found that really intriguing. And my God, and this actually goes back into the previous section about the creepiness and the darkness. That restaurant scene was like the perfect example of like good comedy, good back and forth between the Doctor and Clara, and that darkness, this deep creepiness in that. I mean, that entire scene, I was on edge because I was just like, I don't know what's going to happen. And then when Clara and the Doctor get up to walk away, and the Clockwork Droids get up and start moving toward them, it was so creepy and so well done, and in my opinion, a great way of employing the Clockwork Droids, even though those weren't like, the attack ones or the real droids, they were just duplicates, I guess. But yeah, I just really thought that the return of the Clockwork Droids was done rather well, in my opinion. Curious. Well, I'm sure they may return again at some point, at least to some extent, at least the one with the exposed part of his head, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing whether or not they will make a reappearance overall, not just that one character. Okay, now moving on, my sixth favorite part of this episode was when Clara couldn't breathe, or just don't breathe, part 1. You'll understand what I mean by part 1 in just a little bit. But my God, that scene was just so intense. First of all, the Doctor abandons Clara, which I don't know that it may have just been a situation where, he couldn't open the door for some reason, but I was shocked that the Doctor just left Clara behind at apparently the mercy of these things. But then Clara gets the idea, it's like, she flashes back to what the Doctor said, that they don't breathe, so she holds her breath, and my God, that scene to start with was tense before she went out into the hallway, but when she moved out into the hallway still holding her breath, and then we get this perspective from basically get her perspective, and we see her vision going like first kind of yellow and then red as the intensity of trying to hold her breath for as long as possible to not die just overtakes her, and and eventually she passes out. But that whole scene was just so good, so well done in my opinion. Easily one of the most tense and honestly pretty scary moments that the show has been able to present in quite a while. So I really appreciated that. Again, I would say that my favorite of those would be the restaurant scene, but I mean, just by itself, Clara by herself trying to survive for that period of time was just so tense and so well done. I really, really enjoyed that. Alright, now moving on, my seventh favorite part of this episode was Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. Now, I will say this, I don't feel like I have a full grasp of Capaldi as the Doctor yet, because this entire episode, it went from one extreme to like sort of a resting place. It's like we start with obviously the Doctor fresh out of a regeneration, has all kinds of crazy things going on in his head. He thinks that people speaking English because he speaks Scottish now is a fault in them, which was hilarious, by the way. But yeah, I found him to be overall really enjoyable. I'm really looking forward to getting to know him more as the Doctor, getting to know this personality more. But despite not being able to get a full grasp of who his Doctor is, I just really enjoyed him overall. There's no hesitation at all. I'm really looking forward to seeing him encapsulate the Doctor in full. And he especially near the end of the episode, he really won me over for the most part. But I still want to withhold my judgment until I get to experience him in an episode where he's not back and forth between the crazies and the regeneration amnesia. It's the Doctor, and it's the Doctor coming into his own, or Peter Capaldi coming into his own as the Doctor. I guess that's more accurate. But yeah, alright, now moving on to my final favorite part of this episode. And this is another controversial part, apparently, according to some of the comments. But Missy in the Promised Land / Paradise / Heaven. Which, I just assume heaven because that's what the Promised Land / Paradise is often referred to as. I did not know what to think of her at first. I was taken by surprise, especially by the things she was saying, referring to the Doctor as her boyfriend, leaving me very confused And the fact that she is in heaven, or like, you know, a paradise of some form, I'm curious to see how all that works out, because clearly the droid died in a sense, and then it, you know, was brought into paradise. It's like, how did it get there? It's like, that's a big question for me. But the performance by what is her name? It's something Gomez. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. But the woman that played Missy, she seems like she's going to be a lot of fun, really enjoyable, and very creepy at the same time. It's like there's a lot of personality there, but this underlying creepiness that I can't quite explain. But yeah, I found her, and with that, you know, shock at the end, is like seeing that, I was blown away and just left feeling super excited for where this series is going to go. But moving on from there, it's time to get into my annoyances, and you may consider these nitpicks. Heck, I to an extent consider them nitpicks, but they are all the same annoyances with the episode, so let's get right into them. The first of which, yeah, this one is definitely a nitpick, but I can't help it. At one point, the Doctor and Vastra like do this little, like, you know, mind meld thing. Like she tricks him into falling asleep. And leading up to here, and several other parts later in the episode, it's obvious that they're definitely going heavy on like the physical comedy, which I found enjoyable overall. But then in that scene, when Vastra, like, you know, bounces back his signal or whatever, and he falls asleep, they have this like boing stock sound effect that belongs in a cartoon or a Three Stooges show, but it felt so very out of place here. Had they picked something a little bit more subtle, maybe, it might have made more sense. But it's like, I watched the episode twice, once by myself for the reaction, and then once with Jill, and both times that scene just made me cringe. I couldn't help it. It was just really hard for me to accept, I guess. But yeah, the use of that stock sound effect just really threw me off, and I hope it's not something that they stick with overall, because I don't know if they're going to stick with the physical comedy of the show. I assume it may have just been something mostly because we had Strax around. But yeah, if they do stick with physical comedy, I really hope that they avoid the stupid, you know, stock sound effects from now on, because that was just it really took me out of the show in a really unfortunate way. But anyway, moving on from there, it's time for my second annoyance with the episode, and that would be Don't Breathe Part 2, which is the only way I could think of to put it, because it was sort of a continuation or an extension of what happened to Clara, except the scene it takes place in, Clara tells everyone that the droids are stupid and to hold their breath. And then immediately, as soon as they all hold their breath, the droids stop attacking them. Now, admittedly, it could be blamed that the droids have inferior technology. Maybe they're, like, literally, just like Clara says, they're stupid or they're dumb, so they're easily tricked. But at the same time, these droids are utilizing vision, which, you know, they can see the people they've been fighting with. Otherwise, they'd just be swinging blindly. So the fact that they were able to hold their breath and not... the fact that they hold their breath and just immediately the droids stop attacking was just... it was so dumb. Unfortunately, it was the worst part of this episode. It was so incredibly dumb, and that's the one scene. It's like, in my opinion, it's not so much a nitpick as just a poorly written scene. It's like, okay, we need to drag this out. We need to drag out this conversation, or this scene, while the Doctor is having this conversation with the head droid, whatever you want to call him. And head droid, because of the hole in his head. That's funny. But yeah, that's literally all it felt like to me. Was just doing that was an extension of the scene, just so that they could fit in the entire conversation with the main droid, and it felt so out of place. It felt so poorly done, so poorly written, that it's just it's really hard for me to forgive that, because, okay, like for instance, off the top of my head, they hold their breath, and the droids don't immediately stop attacking, but it confuses them, because they're able to in some form detect that, they're no longer breathing, but, they still continue fighting them, or maybe it makes the droids, like, sort of second guess what they're doing, or in some form. I don't know. Could have gone in a much more interesting and less stupid direction, in my opinion, than what they actually did. But, that's the way it turned out, and it is unfortunately my biggest issue with this episode by far. And this, I didn't write this one down, but I do have a third annoyance. And this is definitely a nitpick, but it's one that I felt, and then also when I watched it the second time, Jill felt from a audible utterance when this happened. But during the intro sequence, the song, overall the song is really good, but then, like, I would say the last 3 to 5 seconds, the music, like the takes on this tone that I can only describe as ear-shattering. I don't know if it's maybe just the frequency of it that kind of hurts my ears or what, but it's like that the very end of the intro sequence almost kind of makes me not like it as much, because of just how almost kind of painful it is to hear that last part. It's like, I thought the last part was like kind of weird, because I was really getting into the intro at first, and then I don't know if I really reacted to it in the video or not, but when that last tone hit, I was just kind of like, I don't know about that. And then again, when I watched it with Jill, I was kind of watching and waiting for her reaction, and then at that very same moment, when that same tone hit, she goes, "Oh, no." So it's not just me in that regard. So I'm definitely curious to see, or to hear, what you all think of that last part. It may be something that we just grow used to, in the same way that I grew used to, Matt Smith's theme, even though I wasn't a huge fan of that intro sequence. But yeah, just as it is right now, it's honestly kind of painful to listen to, unfortunately. So yeah, and I don't have any "Well, That Happens" for this week, so if you, have any other, major positives or negatives about this episode, please do let me know. But let me put it this way. When it comes to, based on the comments, when it comes to, I was going to say Jenna, when it comes to Clara, and when it comes to Missy, if you really don't like them, but you want to say something negative, you should first say something nice. Yes, say something nice about them. But moving on from there, there was way too much awkward silence there. Moving on from there, as for the track of the episode, overall I feel like all the music in this episode really went well with it. While listening to it on the soundtrack itself, some of the songs I wasn't as big of a fan of. It's like, maybe I just felt like they were kind of boring, or just kind of generic overall, but there were definitely some amazing pieces, and I didn't want to do the multiple track pick this time, so I went with just one, and it came down between two. Now the one that came in second place was "Hello Hello," which may be one of the best Doctor Who action sequence songs that I've heard. It's I would say personally top 5 for me, just because every time I hear it, it's really good. But at the same time, it also kind of sounds like it's a Batman action sequence song, or belongs on a Batman soundtrack almost. Not that that detracts from it at all, but yeah, that one was really high up there. The one that I chose though was "Breathe," or maybe it was "Breath." I'm not sure which way they go on that, but just the dread and the darkness in that entire piece, that entire track, just so well done. And I could picture the scenes that it was in completely, and just that track right there by far is the best one of the episode, in my opinion. Now, while watching the show, maybe not necessarily, but just listening to the soundtrack by itself, for me, Breathe or Breath is definitely the most outstanding one. So yeah, let me know your favorite track too if you pay attention to that at all. Moving on, as for my quote of the episode, this is one that had a lot of really good quotes, many of which were funny, a lot of which were snarky, and just, it was really hard to pick a good one, but in my opinion, the best one is the one that came at the moment where I could tell that this Doctor, or that Peter Capaldi, was really starting to come into true form as to who he is as the Doctor. And it's during the conversation with the head droid. And he says this, "Those people down there, they're never small to me. Don't make assumptions about how far I will go to protect them, because I've already come a very long way. And unlike you, I do not expect to reach the promised land." And that's, oh, I love that quote. It's so well done. And it really shows, again, it shows, from my perspective, Peter Capaldi and this iteration of the Doctor, truly coming together. It's all the past amnesia and the post-regeneration stuff, is finally starting to filter away, or completely filter away. And he just, especially that last line. That last line strikes me as super strong, especially. And unlike you, I do not expect to reach the promised land. I just absolutely love that line, and the quote overall. It's just so good. Now, like I said, there were plenty of others, so if you have any particular quotes from the episode that you enjoyed more than that one, please do let me know, because there were a lot of choices to be made, and that, again, that's just the one that for me stood out the most. So yeah, moving on from there, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'll talk about my overall thoughts first, and then I'll go into my theory. Now, my overall thoughts on this episode were that I really enjoyed it overall. I definitely had, a few issues, obviously, but overall I feel like this may be one of, for me at least, the most enjoyable first episodes for a Doctor, because with Tennant we had the Christmas invasion, I think it was. And, I grew to like the Doctor in that episode, but yeah, overall, it was good at best, I suppose, with definitely, the stronger parts coming in later during that episode. Matt Smith's episode, I haven't rewatched the 11th Hour yet, so I don't really know if my opinion on it has changed it much, but at least on my first viewing, I wasn't a huge fan, and a lot of the food stuff really bothered me in that episode. And again, with the best parts coming in at the end. And then with Eccleston, so it's the episode Rose wasn't that great overall. If you've seen the first Discovering Doctor Who episode, I actually mentioned, I watched that episode 3 times before I finally started doing this, and that motivated me to move on and start to figure out if I like the show or not. But with this one, I feel like even when the Doctor was out of commission, or the Doctor was acting more weird than usual, it's an unpredictable and not necessarily likable in all circumstances, there were enough really good characters that kept it going and kept the episode overall strong, in my opinion. So yeah, I feel like I really enjoyed this episode overall, from beginning to end, really, and yeah. There you go. Alright, now, time for my theory, and let me just reiterate what I said at the beginning of this video. Oh wow, this has gone on for a while. Please no spoilers regarding Missy. The theory I'm going to talk about is basically my 3 theories as of this time as to who Missy might be. And if I get them dead wrong, have fun with that. If I get it right, don't tell me. Do not tell me. And one thing that I really enjoyed, back when I was starting to learn things about Doctor Who, people would be very vague. They would use spoilers, sweetie, a lot, just to tease me without saying spoilers, and then immediately after, saying what the what the actual spoiler is. So, regarding Missy, no spoilers. But, as for my actual overall theories about her, I have 3, and I'm going to list them in order of what I actually came up with. My first theory is that Missy is simply an original character that is another psychopath, similar to how River Song was a psychopath, designed, or not designed, but that was brainwashed into wanting to kill the Doctor. But at the same, as River Song became obsessed with the Doctor and, came to love him, maybe that explains why Missy refers to him as her boyfriend. It's like, she's also a psychopath that has been brainwashed and has also become somewhat infatuated and or obsessed with him. So yeah, that's my first theory. Just, they're trying to throw it off, make it seem like they have an actual past, but they don't. She's just an original character. So that's, first theory. My second theory is that Missy is an incarnation of River Song or an alternate universe River Song. So, and we know that alternate universes exist in this show. It's like, it doesn't happen a lot, but it does come up occasionally. So yeah, and I think I kind of mentioned something along those lines during the reaction video. But yeah, that's, I don't know, in my mind it seems feasible at least that this could be either an incarnation of River Song before she became, maybe it was before she even became Mel. I don't know, that one seems probably the most far-fetched, unless it's like the alternate universe thing, which while still far-fetched, is feasible, at least in this show, in my opinion. Now my third, and for now, final theory, and this one might be the most far-fetched of all, but I have my reasons for it, and that is that Missy is the Master. Now, let me explain why I think that. Well, first of all, back in the Doctor's wife, when they got the message cube, or the hypercube, whatever it is, and it had a message from the Corsair, another Time Lord friend of the Doctor's, and the Doctor mentions that the Corsair took on many forms. It's like, he changed a lot, including being a woman. So that implies that Time Lords are not necessarily one gender throughout their lifetimes. So it stands to reason that not only could the Doctor at some point be a woman, which would make complete sense and still make sense logically within the Doctor Who mythos, but so could the Master. And I don't know if maybe regenerating into a woman would have maybe some effect, or even like, maybe he has false memories about the Doctor, or I'm sorry, well, in this case, she has false memories of the Doctor, or what. But yeah, in my opinion, again, going off of the logic brought in by the mention of the Corsair and the fact that the Corsair was at times a woman in addition to being a male, it stands to completely reason that, again, to restate myself, not only could the Doctor eventually be a woman or take on a female form, but the Master could as well. So why not? And the reason I even bother to mention the Master is that it's been so long since there's been any mention of the Master, and let's face it, we never actually saw the Master die. Like, the Master just disappeared in the End of Time, Tennant's final episode. So whatever happened to him, it may have sent him to this paradise, or to this, heaven place, whatever it actually is, and reincarnated, or not reincarnated, but regenerated into a woman. So yeah, again, if any of those are wrong, if any of those are right, if I'm partially right about any of them, don't spoil it for me. Just maybe discuss, whether or not the theories are intriguing, or throw me off. Try to throw me off course, if you can. But don't spoil it for me, because I'm legitimately interested to see if my theories change at all as the series goes along. So yeah. Let's just leave it at that. I apologize if I've been kind of demeaning in this episode. It's just that I really, based on the comments, I stopped reading some of the comments in the previous video because I was worried I was going to get spoiled, and some of the, I actually haven't visited most of the comments since then because I was warned by a few people, and so I'm just being extra careful, and I want to be able to reply to you all. I want to be able to, go in and read the comments, and if I can reply, but you know, if I'm having to, you know, tiptoe through all the comments, that doesn't make it easy, and it just doesn't make it as enjoyable, I assume, for you all if I'm not able to interact fully. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's it for this episode. I just guess I kind of got caught up in my theories there and forgot where I was. But, alright everyone, I do apologize for how long the episode is. I didn't think it would be that long, but I'm ready to get into the next episode, which is Into the Dalek. So, finally getting to see a return of the Daleks. And yeah, let's just get right into that, and yeah, looking forward to starting the next episode, and hopefully it won't be quite as long as this one. But anyway, everyone, I will see you next time on the next Discovering Doctor Who, and until then, Allons-y!